Podstock.
Steve likes to do a hand thing. I've noticed now. He's been doing that for a
I'm
while.
throwing gang signs.
You're throwing game. I'm doing a nonverbal countdown, and Steve's throwing gang signs. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. You know what? It's good that you're doing that, Steve, because I was going to do a finger check on everybody. You know, since we just had the 4th of July, has anyone got the Jason Pierre-Paul
I have my fingers.
results?
Oh, you want those other fingers? Yeah, I've got them too.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
No one's sporting just like 2 fingers on a hand. So that's
No
good.
JPP.
Yep. Yeah, I can't remember which ones he blew off now.
I think it was the
I
thumb
think I'm
and
good.
the little finger. I think is what it was.
Yeah, something like that.
Did
Well,
anybody have a major accident for the 4th of July?
No, nothing.
I mean,
Very
Jason,
relaxing
Philadelphia.
day at home.
Did the city of Philadelphia burn down? I mean, this year was it calm? Was it?
Well,
How was
actually,
the city of hate, Dave?
Actually, it was ringing between fireworks going off. It was like a continuous bang, 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 because fireworks, gunshot, right back and forth.
Right.
So it was like you couldn't distinguish between the two anymore. So it was like we just ducked
Was-
for everything.
Was I the only one who almost called the police on their neighbor?
My neighbor had the police called on him, but he had been asleep, and the police came at like 11:30 at night. He doesn't know why they were called on him.
See, now my neighbor next to me had a very loud party, but they
Okay.
ended at about 10, and so that was okay.
That's
Because
fine.
my problem is like this is like a work day, it was
Yeah.
a Tuesday, but the people behind him were shooting off firecrackers after it was at 11 o'clock. And I'm trying to be a prude, but it's like I got some, I have to get up at 4 in the morning, and
Mhm.
this has got to end. So I was right. I was really about to. I don't think I would have called the cops on him until I went to talk to him first. But I was about ready to march over there, and then they stopped.
We fireworks were going off pretty much nonstop starting nightfall. It started dying down, and then at 2 a.m. some asshole started shooting off fireworks again.
Are you sure it was fireworks?
Yes, I know the difference. I'm well versed in the firework versus gunfire game.
Now I can't
I
imagine they're not illegal in DC.
No, fireworks are legal in DC.
See, how ironic is that? But don't get me started. It's going to turn into politics.
I mean, I don't know if there's like you can't buy X size, but everyone just goes up to Philly or Pennsylvania and buys them at Phantom Fireworks. Dave knows Phantom, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, it's right down. Yeah, it's right off of 95.
Yeah,
Would
yeah.
you believe that I have never in my life shot a firework?
You've shot many other things that go boom. So
Yes, I have. But when you live on a
You
string
shot-
of military
you-
installations, you
you
can't
shot-
use them.
You were involved in some of the best fireworks.
Yeah, the real ones. Yeah.
Yes, the real ones.
But like the
Sure.
play ones, I've never shot one because every Air Force base you live on, you can't
it makes
do
sense that you wouldn't be allowed to. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so then since I've been here, it's illegal in the suburb where I live. It's
Right.
illegal, and I just don't.
Right.
It just also seems like you're kind of lighting your wallet on fire. Like, oh, good, there goes $20.
The amount of money
you know?
people spend is insane.
Oh, it's
Yeah, I'm too
ridiculous.
cheap for that. I'm
Yes.
too cheap for that.
See, I went through that phase of like I wanted to play with fireworks when I was like 9. And after that I was kind of like out of it. I was like, all right, that was fun. Let's move on.
I mean, it's like for me, my father was in the military, and he was in a position where we kind of had to follow the rules. And so
yeah, of
that's-
course.
Yeah.
Of course. No one's going to judge you for that on the military base.
So I know, are there any great 4th of July stories?
No, Dave and I were talking sausage, and we should tell everyone Steve got very upset
Oh, God.
because we started talking about sausage with cabbage and
I
sauerkraut,
just
and he gets so
very
Yeah,
angry.
but you were talking. Yeah, but you were talking about a really great mix of the pre-mixed mustard and sauerkraut together,
which is fantastic.
which is it's just phenomenal. I need to find that now.
Have
do
you
you
guys-
remember
Have your
when-
brains melted out of your head? Are you kidding
No,
me?
it's
Kielbasas
just-
and cabbage?
no.
This is awful.
No, it's just because our palates actually work.
Yes. Yeah.
No, it's because they're like you need to hit Control Alt Delete and
Dave,
start over.
Steve ate MREs for his entire childhood through whenever he finally got out.
Dave
So-
did too. Dave was a
Hold
military guy.
on. Yeah, but before I did the military thing, I was raised in an Italian family and also a German family where we had all of that food, especially on
Right.
the
There
Italian
is
side.
no
Trust
excuse.
me.
There is no excuse for considering cabbage a food.
Steve hates cabbage. Apparently, we didn't know that. We're adding it to the big list, the list of foods Steve doesn't like.
That's pretty high up there, though. That's up there with asparagus. It really is.
It's-
There's nothing
I-
worse than asparagus, but
It really is. All depends how you make it. Because when my wife makes
no, it
it,
doesn't.
yes, it does.
There's no
Absolutely.
excuse for it.
Dave, stuffed cabbage, pro or con?
Just tell your wife to
Stuffed
like
cabbage.
blink twice.
I love
if-
stuffed cabbage.
Yeah, stuff it
Tell
with
your
some
wife
ground
to-
beef
with
and
the
some
right-
rice.
Like
Yeah,
blink
red
twice
sauce.
if she's like caught in like if she's trapped or something and Dave's forcing her to do this. Like go on social media, blink, and I will try to rescue her. Okay. Like blink SOS.
Well, what is that? Three blinks, three long
It's
blinks.
did it
blinks,
dot
three
dot
blinks.
dot did it. That's SOS.
Yeah.
For those
Yeah,
of you who know Morse code,
Yes, I'm.
which sadly I do.
Yeah, I only know the basics like SOS. Still, I think everyone learns that one at some point, right? Or every
I don't
boy
know.
does. Yeah, it's like a
Some
Cub
people
Scout
do.
thing. You learn that.
Kind of, yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean,
I learned that.
So
I,
clearly,
I learned
Dave
that by
is-
watching Castaway.
well,
Castaway.
that's another one,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh.
I think I might have learned it from watching like a 1930s Superman. Is old black and white Superman.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I watched a lot of weird stuff when I was a kid. I don't know why.
No way. Are you kidding me? I'm shocked.
Well, I'm sure that black and white Superman you talk about is the same one I watched. It was like on like every Saturday, I think it was.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, I know exactly
When
which one you're
Superman
talking
was just
about.
a guy who like puffed his chest out and didn't
Yep.
actually have muscle mass.
Absolutely, I
Yeah.
remember that very well.
Yeah.
I can't. Yeah, I just can't watch black and white shows. Something about it, I just can't do it.
Even like the Three Stooges or old comedies.
No, it just doesn't interest me.
Oh, Three Stooges were fantastic.
Something
Yeah,
about
no,
black
no.
and white, I just like shut down.
You're not alone in that, by the way. That's actually not that unusual that people.
I do
have
have
that
a
reaction.
recommendation though.
Okay.
I have watched over this past weekend. I have never seen Yellowstone. I tried to watch Yellowstone 3 times and I couldn't get past the first episode.
Mm.
But one of my kids here talked me into 1883. So I watched that,
That's
not
the
knowing
prequel, right?
that's one of the 2 prequels. And I watched it not knowing who any of these people are, not knowing anything about it, and it was very, very good. So if you haven't watched that, I recommend it.
I would have to get Paramount to bother to watch any of this.
Well, the reason is that it's on Paramount is broadcasting it
Okay.
over the air, but we have Paramount, and so
Yeah.
I watched like 2 or 3 of them, then I binge watched the rest of it.
I
so.
do need to get Paramount because I got to catch up on all the Star Trek stuff that they've got. But
Well, more
Yeah, the
importantly,
strand-
though,
Yeah, like the Strange New Worlds. I'm way behind on that one.
yeah, and it looks
more
fantastic.
importantly,
Yeah,
The-
it
the-
actually started really good.
the Frasier reboot is coming out in a few months.
Is that on Paramount too?
Yes, that I'm
Oh, okay.
excited about.
I didn't
That's
know if
one
that
of
would
my
be
favorite
Paramount
sitcoms.
because Frasier was on NBC, right?
Yeah,
So-
but they sold it to Paramount though.
Gotcha. Kelsey Grammer was like, "Please give them $50. I'll do it."
He was the one who came up with the whole thing. It's his.
Of
He's
course
like
he did. He
executive
needs
producer,
money.
so-
He's got to
Probably
pay
he
that.
might, yeah.
He's got to pay all those ex-wives and prostitutes.
Well, also he was like a raging alcoholic for decades. and
Yes.
so there's no telling what he
And
has
he
left.
loved his prostitutes for a while. is
I
what
don't know.
did.
Did he? Was he into that?
He
Was
married a
that
woman
creepy?
after 24 hours, Steve, who was a prostitute.
Yeah, sounds like Pretty Woman.
Yeah, little
And-
Jack
and-
cooking them.
And are you guys the old Night Court fans?
I
remember
love the
they-
old one.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
new one was okay. I didn't think it was.
Oh, I couldn't
watched
get past
three, four
like
of
2
them.
episodes of the new one. It's bad.
It was okay. It had some
was
decent
okay.
callbacks. It was
It was okay. But without Harry Stone,
Right.
and it's
Oh,
kinda
yeah, of
different,
course.
So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He died though. That actor who played the character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've watched. I've been rewatching news radio. I'm on a re-binging the '90s kick for some reason. I don't know.
I binge watched Frasier recently. That's why I was thinking about it.
Yeah. It's a good show. If you need something to binge watch, Frasier's a-okay by me.
It's kind of a smart comedy,
Yeah. It got later seasons not so much, but early on, yeah.
I think once you get to about season 8 or 9 of any shows, then it starts to.
Oh yeah.
Because they run out of ideas, they have to make a big change, and the big change inevitably tanks, and it ruins the vibe on the show.
Mhm.
And it,
Yep.
like MASH did the same thing. They got super
Sure.
serious, and it
Yep.
went. That was the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seinfeld was smart, right? They like canceled right at season 9 when they, were like,
See,
hey,
I was never enough of a Seinfeld fan to care.
well, I'm just saying it was like a good
Yeah.
timing thing.
Of course,
I
the
wasn't a
ending of it.
religious Seinfeld guy. I just watched every episode every now and then.
Yeah.
I was like, I gotta watch the next episode.
But Seinfeld got the ending way wrong, though, from
Oh,
what
of
I
course,
understand.
of course.
Yeah.
Worst ending of any show.
Well, Game of Thrones is the worst ending of any show.
Game of Thrones. Yeah,
That's
you're
up
right.
there,
Game of
no
Thrones
doubt.
beat them. Yeah, but Seinfeld was that show for a long time.
They're competing for the worst.
Yes. Speaking of competing for the worst,
I knew you could find a good transition.
I've been searching for 10 minutes for a segue here. Let's talk about the Washington football team. It's been a quiet week. There are some interesting stories that came out though in the last week. Item number one that we want to talk about, there was a report from Mark Maskey at the Washington Post that their sources are telling them that Jason Wright is safe in his job for at least a while the team assesses him, sees if he's like a good fit for Harris and what he wants to do, and maybe find a spot for him in Harris's new regime whenever that really takes hold. A lot of fans seem to get either very happy or very sad on social media because that's all that people do. No one ever takes an even keel approach on social media, except for me, and that's why I don't have followers. Steve, you wrote something, and it touches a lot on this topic, but I'm going to say off the bat, giving Jason Wright a few months with the Harris team to help with nothing less than at least the transition, from a business perspective, makes a lot of sense. You know, it's really the Dan Snyders of the world who go into a company, fire everybody because they think they know better. And we've had that show. We don't need that show anymore.
I mean, on the other hand, though, the devil's advocate position would say when it's been a complete and total train wreck, sometimes you just got to set the whole thing on fire and start over. And so it may be that situation, but it has been, Jason Wright's been a bit of a train wreck himself, but not in a we're going to molest, secretaries kind of a way, just in a stupid decision kind of way. And so in that regard, I mean, Dave is the one who's set out in great detail in a number of columns the way that Josh Harris handled his transition into the 76ers and the New Jersey Devils, and it has been, from what he has said and documented, it was a cautious approach that took a year or so to get people in place and make decisions. So in this respect, it doesn't surprise me. And I do think, Alex, that in some cases you just have buttheads like Dan Snyder who come in out and want to exert dominance, and
I mean that's one of the famous
pretend
stories
like they're 5'6" and bigger than everybody else, and
One of the famous stories is when he came in, he did do that. He brought a bunch of people into a conference room and told them they're all fired because that's who he is.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of take two things out of it. One, it's the decisions right there, especially in the rebranding, were questionable at best. There were some decent decisions in there, back and forth, whatever. But he's also had to pick up a lot at the PR train wreck that we all know very well, being Dan Snyder. And we know that Jason Wright is a smart guy. He's a real good businessman and so forth. So he has a good head on his shoulders. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's kind of like Josh Harris going, okay, now I'm going to come in. I'm going to take the handcuffs off you may or may not have had under Dan Snyder. I want to see what you can do now that you're kind of almost like spread your wings. Let me see what you can do, over the next several months. And so it's like, okay, go do that, and I'm going to watch you. And it's going to be end of July by the time he takes the team over officially. I think you mentioned it before, probably end up being like when he's really kind of officially, like kind of really feet to the ground. It's going to be probably almost a month into the season, because still used to all the transition, all that stuff and everything. So right now, this year's kind of a wash to Harris. I wouldn't be surprised if he's looking at it that way. So Jason Wright, he adds continuity going into this year, and then Josh Harris will have a tight leash on him, and say, okay, if you can prove something over the next 6-8 months, maybe I'll keep you on staff, or whoever I bring in to run the show. Maybe he'll sit there and look at, okay, well, we'll keep him, we'll not move on. I think right now, I think it's just all about getting this transition of power taken care of, putting everything into place right now in terms of that. this year be more or less a wash. I think we all know kind of Rivera is probably done after this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a situation where he's looking at Bieniemy this year, looking at maybe Jack Del Rio since he has the history of coaching, or just going, hey, you know what? You're all going to be gone anyway because right now I'm going to spend this next 6, 7, 8 months, and I'm going to look at potential team presidents and GMs that I'm going to introduce in January, February of next year. So all this is moot anyway. You know what
I
I mean?
don't
So,
think that Jason Wright has done a very good job as team president. He has, by comparison's sake, but the bar there is incredibly low. Obviously,
oh, sure.
Washington's had
Yeah.
2 train wrecks in a row, and Vinny Serrato and Bruce Allen. They both have just been a downright embarrassment. But and Wright's been an embarrassment just in different ways, and he's far more charismatic than either one of those 2 guys. So like the fan, he smiles. He's got $1 million smile, and he at least pretends to engage in some fans. You guys have both talked to him.
Yeah.
So in that regard, I think he's well liked, and he hasn't embarrassed the franchise. But I also think they've made a series of stupid decisions. I can't personally see how they would keep him on in a different capacity. I don't think that's a thing. He's the team president right now. He's running all of business operations. I mean, you're not going to bring him in and say, okay, now you're like, you're the, chief financial officer or something. I mean, that's just not a thing. I don't think either. He's going to stay in his current capacity. He's going to go. And personally, I think what will happen is he'll get a job offer out of nowhere and he'll leave in triumph,
Sure.
excuse me, thanks for your service. And he's going to move on to, wherever else, the league office, something.
Yeah, go into the new NFLPA headquarters since there's transition happening there.
Or whatever. Maybe not even
And-
football. Who knows? But yeah.
And you know what? And that's an excellent point because it could even be something along the lines where it's like, hey, listen, NFL, we don't want to see this guy fired. We don't want to see him just cast it off. Just kind of keep him around, and we'll find something for Jason Wright, whatever. Or Jason Wright finds something else, and then boom, then he'll move on in due time, and then you can
Sure.
kind of get. Because I mean, this year's a wash. We all know that.
Yeah.
For the most part. So
But
it's
I don't
just-
think he's been a very good team president, though.
I
do
mean,
not.
the stuff where he supposedly was, focused is the stuff we're not going to see, which is fixing their HR department and little things like that. And if he did do a good job there, that's great. Congratulations for, taking the worst HR department and fixing that.
And turning it into average.
Yes,
I mean,
even
yes,
if you
it's
just
an
turned it into
accomplishment.
average, it'd be a
Yeah.
huge improvement.
Well, I
Uh,
will say in terms of my process of getting season tickets this year and dealing with that side of the house a little bit. I mean, they were constant communication with me. They were extremely helpful with everything along the way. I didn't have any kind of horror stories you hear years back with people trying to deal with the business side with their season tickets, stuff like that. I had nothing like that at all. So, I mean, maybe something did get fixed. I don't know because I never experienced that in the past. I have no idea.
I was a season ticket holder during the bad years, and I did not have a problem with them.
Okay.
It was easy, and I didn't have any of those hassles.
Look, as long as you're giving them money, they're not going to give you a problem.
No, I
true.
mean Dave's right. Though.
They
I mean,
might
I've heard
sue
some
you, but
stories. You have heard
Yeah.
stories. But
Oh yeah, of course,
Yeah.
of course. I think look, you can divide these teams up into who's got what fiefdom so many ways, right? And we've all been in big corporations. We know that happens. I think they probably did put a lot on his plate, Jason Wright's plate, way too quickly when he first got here, because he's not even 40, and you suddenly made him the
he's
team
not
president.
experienced. Remember, he was
Zero
at Kinsey.
experience,
He was
yeah.
a consultant, business consultant.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that he really botched a lot of PR stuff. I think that's fair to say.
He
The
botched
rebrand.
important stuff.
Yeah.
He botched the important PR stuff. The Sean Taylor, the rebrand. I mean, it's just everything that impacted the fans the most.
Right. I think if he had been brought in and told you're not even focusing on that, just focus on the, behind the scenes office stuff, he'd be fine. But
Yeah.
that's not the job that he was given, unfortunately.
And to be fair too, he came in a situation where it's like, I mean, he has no tie with his organization, no history with them at all.
Mhm.
He's supposed to deal with fans that have history with the organization.
Right.
They're expecting one direction, and don't forget about the history and all that stuff and everything. And was just like, but him and Rivera, they have no ties to that history, and all they were throwing there.
Yeah.
So they made the decision they thought was best for the organization, but it was, I mean, Commanders.
It was
How was that
no.
even? That was.
It was also a zero. There was no answer they could come up with that I think would have been great, but they really just didn't come up with even a good answer.
The
No.
best one, the best name that everybody could have got behind was like Warriors,
Yeah, of course.
Red
Or
Hogs
Wolves or
or
Red
Hogs, or
Wolves.
yeah,
Yeah.
though any of those, I think most of the fans have been okay with. But it wasn't just the name itself that was botched, that he botched. I got
The
the
process.
sense that they were just, the process was terrible.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, it was a.
And I just had this sense behind the scenes that they were just pretending they wanted the fans' input, and they
Right.
really didn't care.
That's what everyone felt at the
Yeah,
end.
that's what I felt about it. And
Yeah.
then the unveiling was just a train wreck, and the whole thing was
Amateurish,
just,
honestly.
it was amateur hour. It was a total amateur hour. So
I wouldn't
this
even give
kind
it that much credit.
yeah. So
well,
this kind
I
of
can
blends.
because I've been to 2 uniform unveilings and team name unveilings in the minor leagues for the XFL and the Arena League. Well, I didn't go to the XFL, but I watched it live. They did a better job and a more professional job than the Commanders did.
That's
At least Ted Leonsis broke out the smoke machine.
This topic kind of blends nicely into my Monday column that we
It
published.
does.
And it was called "How Long Will It Take to Turn Washington Around?" And what I was kind of getting at here is, little Danny is frog marched out of town here in a couple
Right.
weeks, and Josh Harris comes in. I think hopefully everybody, even I, hope that the franchise turns around and becomes normal. But how long will it take for this team to become a realistically competitive on a year in year out basis? Because they have not been that way certainly since Gibbs 2. And if you wanted to call them competitive in Gibbs 2 tenure, fine, but probably since Joe Gibbs left the first time 30 years ago,
right.
realistically.
Maybe Norv. They had a couple competitive years.
Yeah,
under Norv,
maybe
didn't they?
so. But solidly competitive,
Right.
probably not. And so my number one thing to look at was the front answer. I think we've kind of answered the front answer. It's like Jason Wright. Personally, I think he's not the answer, and they'd be better to cut him loose immediately. But my point with mentioning him here is that if you let him drag on for a year, well, that just kind of delays the inevitable in my book. So I think the sooner you move on, he's going to move on. The sooner you do it, the better off you are. That's my vote.
I think they should move on from him. I have, like I said, I have no problem if your approach as a businessman is, I'm gonna see what he can do. I might even start bringing in people under him so they get the ropes and they're used to how things work. That way, when I bring in the guy I actually want, he's not like coming in to a team that he has no idea how to operate. It's a transition process. Being in the government, I've been in many transitions from one contract to another and all that stuff. And the smoother those go with like people not trying to burn the house down, the better. So, that's part of life.
Okay. So, I think we've covered the front office. So the other topics, the other areas that I listed as areas that needed to change. One, I linked the coach / GM and the quarterback together, and I'm going to get that. I'm going to read the list and we'll tackle each one separately. Coach, GM, and quarterback. I listed that as one. Offensive line and a running back. I think they could fix all those and I think that is what you could need to have a competitive team. So, coach. The reason why I originally had the coach and the quarterback separately, but the God's honest truth is that Ron Rivera is tied to Sam Howell. I think at this point, if Sam Howell defies all odds and becomes a superhero, they'd probably keep Ron Rivera just to not rock the boat too much. But if it goes as probably expected and Howell doesn't become that, Ron, as we talked about last week, has 2 years left. He's almost certainly going to be gone.
Yeah.
So Ron's fate, I think, is tied to Sam Howell, and the odds are against Howell becoming a franchise quarterback. So, and again, in this respect, it's in some ways trying to keep both those two on are kind of delaying the inevitable a little bit. But so I think if they don't work out, you're probably looking at 3 years to fix all that, because you would bring a new coach in, you're going to draft a new quarterback. It's going to take a year or two to get that quarterback in if they find him at all. You know, then it'll take him a year to get his footing and whatnot. So I think if Howell doesn't work out, Ron's gone, and all that sets the team back 3 years, I think.
Yeah, I think actually I'll disagree one aspect of if Hal balls out, he winds up being this gem and is good to great player or whatever. I don't think that saves Rivera at all, because Rivera has done little to nothing up until this point. And now you look at what's the one key figure in there that would have generated this production into Hal, and that's Eric Bieniemy. And I'm telling you, Harris is not. If he sees that kind of production in Hal this year, let's just say Jalen Hurts. That's not going to happen. Let's just say Jalen Hurts happens, and he puts up MVP type numbers, all that stuff. There's no way Eric Bieniemy walks out of this building. There's no way. He's gonna figure out a way on either Ron Rivera deciding to retire or resign or whatever. He'll do it amicably as possible. But there's no way Eric Bieniemy is not the next head coach of this team if Sam Howell takes that kind of a leap, even a moderate to really good leap. I'm sorry, I don't see Harris doing that. So I think so. But as far as that, I think Rivera is just done after this year, period. You know, so that's just the way I see that.
Regardless of even coach and quarterback, honestly, it starts with the GM question.
Sure.
Notice I said coach / GM was the
and right now we have that weird Dan Snyder obsessive structure of head coach focus, which has not worked well for the most part. You know, I guess it worked okay under Gibbs, like you said, but in my mind, I want the traditional go find us a good young GM. We've had a couple. We lost out on Kyle Smith for some reason, because he was a very good find you guys in the 4th round, the 5th round. He was very good at finding those gems. You know, we can just say that about Kyle Smith. We need another guy like that back here, making those calls in the draft, building through the draft, because that's the way you have to do it in the NFL today. You can't build through free agency too much. Once you have a good base, you can, you know, make some moves. That's what the Rams did, of course. But we need a GM first. Once you get that GM, let the GM have his time to pick out his coach and his quarterback, because that's the traditional way to try and do it. And it doesn't work 100% of the time, but works a hell of a lot more than the hodgepodge we've had for 30 years.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I mentioned that in the column. And you know, the truth is, I think a lot of Ron Rivera's draft choice has been weird.
Absolutely.
You know, he's not a great drafter. Yeah, I mean, they've hit on some players, you know, here and there, but I think I wholeheartedly agree with you. If Ron leaves, I think you need to get a GM in place, let the GM pick the quarterback or the coach, exactly like Alex is suggesting. Yeah. But my point is, if that happens, that's a 3-year thing, because you're kind of burning down, starting over. So that's. And
that, by the way, that's not even 3 years to a Super Bowl. That's 3 years to maybe you have a playoff caliber team.
Yeah, I don't think you can realistically plan for Super Bowl. That's why I said competitive. How long? What will it take to get the team competitive? You know, and then the Super Bowl may or may not. Who knows?
Yeah, the nice thing they have is they have a decent roster. Not great, but decent
in some aspects.
And typically, I would 100% agree with you, Alex, on that. But if Sam Howell and Bieniemy really work well like that, I can see a situation where he keeps Bieniemy, has some input with Bieniemy in terms of what his philosophy is and what he needs, and then finds that young GM that would suit that. You know, like that, like someone like that. Alec Hurley out. I think Alec Hurley from Philadelphia behind Roseman. I mean, that philosophy of team building right there would suit Bieniemy beautifully. Even if you grab someone from the Chiefs and bring them over here, one of their young guys, and you make it very clear. It's like, I'm keeping you Bieniemy, but this guy is in charge, you know. And if he feels in 3 years it's not happening and he wants to move on from you, that's all on him right there. But
Sure.
I could see a little bit of that. But in all reality, you would typically want to see bring a GM in, then start from there, which I would typically 100% agree.
I don't know. I sometimes think Eric Bieniemy is overrated by the fan base.
Oh,
But
well,
we'll
no,
find out.
we'll find
He's
out
all
for
we
sure.
have to
we'll
hang our
find
hats on, Steve. That's why.
Yeah,
Yes.
my newfound objectivity tells me that the guy's overrated. But regardless,
Well, I'm also talking hypothetical, which is always a big.
I know
if,
you
so.
are. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So the second one, offensive line. To me, this is maybe the biggest problem.
Oh,
I think
sure.
the second worst thing that Ron Rivera's done, the worst thing he's done is this mishandling of the quarterback situation. He hasn't even really made a decent traditional effort to find a quarterback. He's been through all these players. If he lucks out on Sam Howell, great. But Sam Howell is a 5th round pick. The second thing is the offensive line. He has destroyed the offensive line, completely ruined the offensive line in Washington. They had multiple Pro Bowlers, established veterans. Blame the Trent Williams thing on whoever you want, but the bottom line is Ron got rid of him, didn't try to fix the problem, and they've gone from an above average at worst offensive line to just a mess. And that is not something you can fix in a year. This requires multiple drafts, multiple years, a focus on offensive line in the draft, not just drafting the occasional Braden Daniels. You need to find an elite left tackle.
Yeah.
You need to find an elite right tackle. You need to find John Jansen. That is what you do. You need to find Chris Samuels. And that is tough. And that's going to take a guy who's willing to dedicate himself to it. That is clearly not Ron Rivera. Ron just doesn't care
it's
about
not a focus of his. And look, we were spoiled for a lot of years in Washington about good offensive line play. Obviously with the Hogs, but even if you go post Hogs, Washington didn't have a lot of really bad O-lines throughout the last 40 years. There might have been one under Shanahan that was kind of bad that I remember. Like, Spurrier obviously didn't care about line play. I think Patrick Ramsey has the record for the most sacks in a single season for any Redskins quarterback at least. But yeah, you can try and fix O-line in the year, but look at how hard it's been for the Giants to build their O-line back after they ignored it for so long. They've spent multiple high-round picks. They've drafted, 4 left tackles, I think, that have all busted recently in high draft spots. If you can't identify good linemen, it's very hard to build a good line. And I don't know if we have anyone in the scouting department who's really an O-line, hunter. Like, who's the guru?
Well, obviously not.
No.
And this is why I think it's another 3 years at least. You cannot just do this in a year. You can't just go out and find this. I mean, you have to dedicate resources to it, whether they don't want to or they can't. One of those two things, maybe both, is true. And I think it's going to take someone else besides Ron Rivera. So I of all these things, they could luck into a quarterback. They could fall into the draft and find somebody. If they suck bad enough, they could get who's the guy. They could fall into the guy at USC. What's his name?
Sure.
Yeah. Caleb Williams, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go, Caleb. But I don't think you're going to do your young quarterback any favors if you have an offensive line that can't protect him and can't establish a run.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to mention too. How horrible of a mix is that? You had one of the league's worst offensive lines with a young, inexperienced 5th round pick quarterback.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about an offensive line a few years ago, a little more than a few years ago, that was in the top 10 almost most all statistical categories. Now you're looking at offensive line who's
one of the worst in the NFL.
In terms of sack percentage and sacks let up per game, they were ranked 25th last year. In terms of yards per carry, yards per attempt, they were ranked 21 and 23 respectively last year. I mean, it's a complete flip to what they were. And it's been, and I understand why I can understand why you let Brandon Sheriff go. You don't want to spend him all that money because he hasn't been staying healthy. Well, find someone better than Trey Turner, Andrew Norwell. I mean, that was a horrible replacement. You sit there and you draft Sam Cosby, in the second round. I think he's got some talent, but you did nothing. I mean, he did nothing to really progress and groom the way he should have. I mean, that's just an indictment on the staff right there, mostly. But I don't know. It's just absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, and so I think we have another 3 years there. That's my point in all this. Another 3-year thing, and the last one I listed, although I'd probably add something to this. The more I think about it, is but running back.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think you can have a team like Washington and not have a legitimate big time running game. It doesn't have to be one guy, but you have to have a legitimate big time running game. And by the way, just for the record, Brandon Scherff played 17 games last year. Just FYI.
Yeah, as soon as he left you,
right.
Yeah, ironically enough.
But no, I mean there's some legitimacy to the certain teams don't get healthy.
Yeah, right. So, but anyway, so I didn't mean to distract, but I was looking up while I was talking.
Yeah.
So running backs. I know there's a lot of fans out there that have a lot of faith and they love or people in our comment section love the running game in Washington, or the running back room rather.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Antonio Gibson is anything special. And Brian Robinson has a great story, in all mad respect for overcoming the gunshot and all that. But like we said before, he had a couple games that he was even anywhere close to 4 yards per carry. And some of that is offensive line, but I think they need to keep looking. And I don't think that this team is going to succeed without it. Now, I think that's an easier fix. You could stumble onto some, improve the O-line slowly and stumble onto another good running back. So I don't think that's a 3-year prospect. That's a 1 or 2 year thing.
Yeah, look, we see it every year. Running backs get drafted in the 5th, 6th, 7th round who are somehow a 1,000-yard guy. And if you have a good enough O-line, it doesn't matter who you're.
Well, it does a little bit, but I know what you mean.
But you get some much bigger holes to run through, which help.
Right.
The whole running back question, and O-line too, to an extent, to me, is whoever this coach is in the future, because let's assume it's not Rivera, it's going to be a different scheme. Hopefully it's not, some 1980s outdated, we're just going to try and run it down your throat scheme that Rivera's doing right now with the run game. Hopefully they're a little more modern. But that's going to dictate who you're drafting. That's going to dictate the type of running backs you're getting. It's going to dictate the type of offensive lineman you're getting. If you want to run more zone, you need faster, smaller guys. Sam Cosmi is the only guy who might be a good zone blocker that we have on this line right now.
I don't know what Sam Cosmi is, and neither does the team, because they just moved him to guard.
Yeah. Well, given his foot speed or his athletic profile, I think he's a better guard anyway.
Most of the time when they make this move, it's a couple of years and that's it. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
But just look at the Chargers as a perfect example. They can't make it. They can't make a deep playoff run. They struggle to keep up with the Chiefs down the back end of the year. And why? They have Austin Eckler. It's a great receiving back, really is. We got them catching 100 balls last year. Helped me win my fantasy championship, but I digress. But
you had to throw that in there, didn't you?
Oh, of course I did. But when you look at Austin Eckler, the guy is right around 4 yards a carry. He's not a between the tackles runner. They don't have that guy in Los Angeles. They just don't. And when you look at Antonio Gibson, he's not the receiving back that Eckler is, although he is a good receiver. But he's not a between the tackles guy. And we've already seen that. He doesn't have the natural hips and so forth to run in between the tackles, and he's not as a patient runner as you have like Mark Bullock and all them out there. We'll talk about with him. He's a good runner. He's not bad, but he's not that instinctive guy. Brian Robinson, we don't know what he is. I mean, maybe he will turn it around, be 100% this year, and he'll be a beast between the tackles. Who knows? We'll find that out for sure. But the Chargers are a perfect example. I mean, you can have the quarterback, you can have the line, you can have all the weapons you want, but if you don't have that running game, you're not doing anything against teams like the Chiefs because you can't close out
Right.
the game.
Right.
So the last I didn't put this in the column, but I kind of regret it now that I'm sitting here thinking about it. I didn't include middle linebacker. And the reason I didn't is in my head at the time, I thought if you can fix the draft room, you can fix the quarterback, you can fix the offense, the defense would probably be good enough to get along, But the truth is, if you're going to add one thing, the truth is they've just massively botched the linebacker room in Washington as well. And it would make life a lot easier if you had a big time middle linebacker. So I was going to add something. It'd probably be that. That's another thing you could do in a year. You could find a talented middle linebacker if you tried hard enough in the draft in a year.
I don't even think you need to necessarily just go draft there. You could fix the linebacker room in general with just some decent investment in free agency too. We all know Jamin Davis is just average, but if you added two more, maybe just above average guys to that linebacker group, you're okay. You're not going to be elite there, but that this team is built to be elite on the D line and at corner and safety. Like they just need more help. I could live if we had 3 C+ at linebacker finally, because right now we have like C+, D-, and I don't even know what comes below F.
Incomplete.
Yeah,
that's what we have.
Yes, there's a lot of incompletes at linebacker.
Well, for me, for Darian Mathis will always be tied to the one single mistake Ron Rivera made, passing on Nakobe Dean for him. Because this year it would have been a healthy Nakobe Dean with Jamin Davis, and then
that's a nice one
right
too.
There, that would have been a fantastic one too. Because Nakobe Dean is a true Mike Backer who can run sideline to sideline. He's fantastic on the blitz and everything. And you could have just let Jamin Davis do his thing out there in terms of, covering in the zone and then blitzing them every now and then. And you had so much flexibility right there in terms of what you could have done. And all we got for Darian Mathis anyway, so we're good.
Who's not even going to play? What a dumb waste of a draft pick.
Yeah.
So
we'll go back to playing a lot of 5-1 because that works so well so far.
As a second, yeah. Don't get me started. Again, it's just another dumb draft decision by a coach who shouldn't be drafting. In charge. So after saying all this, to me, unless you kind of get lucky in a couple of years, you're really looking at maybe 3 seasons. So before the team could really be turned around and become like a perennial contender type, I think you're looking at probably 2026.
I think, it depends on how quickly they make a move at GM and coach, but I think you could get it done.
Absolutely.
Faster than 3, probably 2, but what they really need to do, and Ron Rivera's not going to do this, it's going to be on the next regime to do this. They're going to need to, unfortunately, make some decisions and try and stockpile some draft picks somehow. I don't know if that means trading away some guys or trading away draft picks for one offseason to stockpile for another offseason. But this team's going to need one of those drafts like the Eagles just did, where they have like 12 picks and a lot of high picks going into a draft, so they can just stockpile young talent for cheap. And that can be your building block. You know what I mean? Like that seems to be the way a lot of these good teams are being built now. Is they'll have one draft where they're stockpiling, and then they'll use free agency the next couple of years when they don't have as many draft picks, and build that way.
I just think it's too much to ask in 2 years. Too many things have to go right. Okay. So this kind of fades into was it Dave? Dave saw a thing about how much cap space Washington has in next year. Now I'll say that I have not updated my cap chart in like 3 weeks, so it's not totally accurate. But Washington is in the realm of 161 million on the books for next year. Mm-hmm. Now the basic pre-adjustment salary cap this year the base salary cap was 224 million. So if you figure that it goes up to at least 34 million, Washington is looking at somewhere, depending on how far it goes up and the adjustments and everything, somewhere 75 to low 80 million. I think, Dave, you saw the number you saw was 88 million. That strikes me as a bit high, but I mean, it depends on
83
83.
million.
So that's right in line with what
Yeah.
it will probably be, plus the rollover space and everything. So what we thought we'd do, who is Washington stuck with? Anybody wondered this? With the new regime in here, who's here for the long term, and who's
Well, obviously they got the big contracts, right?
well,
you know.
yeah. So Jonathan Allen,
Right.
is
And
one,
Payne
and Payne,
and McLaurin.
right?
Well, so here's my question: is McLaurin already? Well, his deal wasn't a long deal. It was like 3 years, right, Steve?
Terry
I think it was
McLaurin.
added 4 years on top of this year, wasn't it?
Terry McLaurin
Oh.
is signed through 2025.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, that'd be 4 years then. You're right.
Yeah, but so who are they stuck with? Well, they're stuck with Allen, and they're
Sure.
stuck with Payne. They're not stuck with Chase Young's a big number. They're not stuck with him. They can get rid of him.
Right.
Montez Sweat, those guys are both going to be free agents at the end of the
Kendall
year.
Fuller can be let go.
Yeah, I'm going to just go
Yeah.
down the list here.
Yeah.
None of the linebackers are worth the Tinker's damn. So of the cornerbacks, every single one of them. Let me see.
Other than Fuller right now.
Yeah, four. Obviously, the rookie Forbes 2026. The two rookies. St. Just is through 2024 rookie contract. Kendall Fuller is a free agent at the end of this year, so he'll probably be gone. So they're not really burdened with any high contracts in the corner group. Same with safeties. Cam Curl is a free agent at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
They're not burdened with anybody. They're the tight end room. Same thing. Couple rookies, no big contracts. That are no big contracts that are burdening the team.
Yeah, if anything, honestly, you've got a lot of guys who are in the last year of their deal this year where it's expensive, but you'll probably let them walk and you won't really feel much pain.
Yeah, like Logan
yeah.
Thomas has a $8.3 million cap hit next year, but he's got 1.75 in dead cap, so they can get rid of him if he doesn't perform.
Yeah, and having just written up our tight end thing for which we're not talking about this week, but next week, yeah, they'll be freeing up some cap space, is my guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Guards, who cares if they keep any of them?
Right.
Not one of them's worth stressing out over. I mean, Nick Gates is the high dollar guy there, incredibly speaking, $16.5 million. But even his cap hit is not huge. They can get rid of him next year.
Yeah.
He's so none of those tackles, again, not burdened with any of these guys. Charles Leno is signed through 2024. The rest of them, rookie deals, or Andy Wiley, I guess, is your other one. Wiley's got a big contract. They're burdened with him. $24 million. His cap hit in 2024 is $9 million. But his dead cap 7.8, so they could get rid of him if they wanted to.
Yeah, you wouldn't get much out of it, but you could.
Yeah, right. You get what is that, $1.5 million or something?
Yeah. Well, you could June 6 it, maybe get some more, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Running backs, not burdened with anybody except the rookies.
Right.
Quarterbacks, not one of them. Sam Howell is on a rookie deal through 2025. Brissett's on a 1-year deal. Jake Fromm, 1-year deal, minimum salary anyway. Tim DeMort's a practice squatter.
Yeah.
So
I kind of get the feeling that, for all our issues with how they've been building the team, this is by design partially. They are trying to keep the budget down for this team and keep a lot of cap space.
Well,
I
said
hopefully
why.
To make a splash at some point.
Well, it's not so much that. It may be that. But when you're selling major assets, you don't want to burden them with significant contracts.
Yeah.
That's probably where they were going with it. Because if you really look at it, they're not really stuck with a bunch of anchors. They will have room to do a lot next year if they want to. And even more, then they could get rid of a lot of these big contracts on the book. The only ones that are really truly stuck with probably Payne and Allen and McLaurin.
Yeah.
who you don't want to get rid of, McLaurin anyway.
Yeah.
So beyond that,
Oh, well, actually, that kind of that's kind of good news, really, because you're burdened with three guys you want to keep anyway.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
you want to keep that interior strong, and you had that with Payne and Allen. I mean, McLaurin is a really good receiver, great team leader. He's a guy you want to build around. And Josh Dotson, you got him lined up for the next couple more years before you
rookie
even talk.
contract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with that being a first round pick, you have him in place with McLaurin. So now you have time to make that decision. Do you want Dotson to be your lead guy, let McLaurin go, or depending
Mhm.
behind team is shaped, you keep them both. I mean, you have great flexibility going forward.
All things considered, a couple years ago they had themselves locked into $60 million on Trent Williams, Josh Norman, and Alex Smith, and none of them were on the field. So, that this is a much better spot to be in than that. That's
Well,
for
see,
sure.
this kind of ties back into our last topic about how long is it going to take to rebuild. And the good news, and I said 3 years, everybody else had different answers, but the good news is the roster actually is set up to do it. They need to
Right.
have the talent and skill to do it, and that's another question entirely. But from a roster construction standpoint, they have the roster to be able to build if they're good enough to do it.
Yes, they do. Yeah, we should hop to the next topic, which is, of course, we got to talk about tackles. One thing we should mention real quick as we were talking about roster, Chase Roullier officially announced his retirement, which should surprise no one. He wrote a very heartfelt thing on IG, and I saw it on Twitter. It's everywhere. So just, get on social media if you really want to read it. He talks about how, the last 2 years have been really rough on him physically, which I guess that's not surprising. He's been hurt a lot.
Right.
Congratulations on retiring, though, Chase Roullier, I guess. I know it's way earlier than you probably wanted. But,
Hey, he made a lot of money. He's set for life if he was smart. Congrats on his retirement.
That's
Yep.
true. That is true. Hopefully.
Doesn't have
if
to
he's
work
smart.
another day in his life unless he wants to.
Unless he wants to, or unless somebody swindled him, which I hope didn't happen.
Way to be negative.
Yeah, well, we've just seen it too many damn times.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can see him in a coaching rank somewhere along the way.
Yeah, he kind of has that vibe a little bit, doesn't
Yeah.
he? Down to earth, gritty lineman type.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right,
Robbie
so
Duncan type.
let's talk linemen. Let's talk tackles because that's
Let's.
our position group this week. Steve, you did the write up for this one, right?
I did.
So
Yeah, this will be published tomorrow, Thursday. So today, for those of you who are listening to this,
right.
Let's start at the top. The starters, I think the clear-cut starters at tackle are Charles Leno and Andrew Wiley.
Yep.
Wiley mainly because he has a big contract, not necessarily because I think he's accomplished. Leno, just to throw some numbers out, he's in the middle of a 4-year, $37 million contract, $18 million in guarantees, unchallenged, left side. Not great. Okay, he made the Pro Bowl in 2018.
Right.
But he's not anywhere close to the Chris Samuels, Trent Williams level at all. But he is what Washington has at the moment.
Right.
Andrew Wiley, slightly more interesting just because we haven't seen him yet. We haven't talked about him. So he was an undrafted free agent in 2017. Went through the Browns, the Chargers, and the Chiefs, and now he's in Washington. 71 games, 59 starts, moved all around, left tackle, right guard, right tackle. I honestly don't know what to make of this guy. I haven't paid a lot of attention to him. I wouldn't have high hopes necessarily, but Washington has given him a massive contract, so they seem to think highly of him. So thoughts on Andrew Wiley?
I mean, I think this was brought in as a security blanket kind of thing for Eric Bieniemy. He came over, and this was the first big move they made, right? So this is obviously his comfort level is to go grab a veteran guard tackle. Even though Wiley's kind of a flex guy, right? But anyway, he went and grabbed this guy. and it'll be interesting to see. He's technically the youngest of the big three tackles we have, which is not great at 28 years old. I feel like they needed to get younger at the position in general. But, I know he's not highly loved in Kansas City, which has me concerned.
Dave?
Well, I mean, he's just like you said, he's a Bieniemy guy. He knows the offense, and he's comfortable with them. And let's be honest, he's an upgrade to what we had. I mean, we had nothing on that right side that was really worth anything. Sam Cosmi was just overmatched every single week he played, and then the rotation of guys they had out there just. So I mean, he's an upgrade. How much of an upgrade? Considering what we had, probably significant, but the end result of the player that we have isn't exactly in the top tier of right tackles in the league either at the same time. So it kind of tells you how bad we were last year at the right tackle. Considering him, he's a significant upgrade, but he's still not the upgrade that we needed at that side going into the season. So
is it great? No, but it's what Washington has, and so we'll see how it goes. The primary backup in the swing tackle is undoubtedly Cornelius Lucas.
No question.
Yeah, there's no question. He's 6'8", 327. For those wondering, I didn't realize he was that tall. Final year of a 2-year contract, $6.5 million. But he's experienced. He's had a lot of starts. He's had 43 starts. Clearly a swing tackle. Is he great? No. But is he an NFL quality player who can jump in there and play legitimate NFL football? Yes. So in some ways, he's a pretty good in that role. He wouldn't be a good starter, but in the role of like backup swing tackle, I think he's probably pretty good. Probably pretty good setup.
Yeah. I mean,
I agree.
It's your third tackle. You want him to be somebody with a little veteran talent, right? Like that's something you need.
Right.
So I don't mind that.
Okay. So the next group I divided into players who have a real shot at the active roster. To me, there's two of them. Braden Daniels, because he was a draft pick, and Trent Scott. Trent Scott's a veteran. They gave him some decent money, $655,000 in guarantees. So I think they like him enough to say he may have a shot to be like the last lineman on the roster, potentially. Braden Daniels, what was he, a 5th round pick, I believe? 5th round pick?
4th round, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not going to want to waste a draft pick, so I think he's kind of in one way or the other. They're not going to put a 4th round pick on the practice squad. So I think you got those two guys. The others, I'm going to run through them all here, and then you guys can comment. So the rest of the group is Alex Akinbulu, Mason Brooks, Jared Jones-Smith, who was signed fairly recently, and Aaron Monterio. Of those guys, all of them are practice squad levels. Akinbulu was on the practice squad last year. Brooks is new, 2023 undrafted free agent. Jones-Smith has been around for a while, 2018. He's been on 1 billion practice squads. That's kind of his mission in life. And Aaron Monteiro, 2019, been around as well. So that's the group. Very, very unaccomplished at the back end and at the top end. But any thoughts on any of those guys?
Well, for me, Braden Daniels, I think, is a guy that could ultimately end up being our future right tackle going forward. I mean, a lot of people think he could be our left tackle, but I just don't think he has the athletic score when you look at his scouting report to be that left tackle to take on those elite pass rushers. But I think he's in a prime position to really become a really good, in about maybe 2-3 years, a really good right tackle going forward. I think he could wind up being that answer right there. And hopefully Cosmi kind of produces being that right guard, and that kind of helps trickle out to the other side of the line down the road with Chris Paul as one of the future guards potentially. But that's another topic for another day. But yeah, no, I like Braden Daniels probably the most out of that whole group. I think he was a really nice draft pick for where they got him, and I think he has a real good potential of being our future right tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little traditional. I don't think you get left tackles falling out of the sky very often. Like those are your 1st and 2nd round players more often than not. So,
Right.
Given where Daniels was drafted and all that, yeah, he might work out as a nice right tackle for a couple of years. So,
I mean, none of us know a ton about any of these guys. Braden Daniels, if you're going to bet on one of them, certainly he's the one to bet on. I think that much is certain. And so, but that's the tackle group. Not accomplished, pretty poor to be perfectly honest. Not highly rated. I think they really need Andy Wiley to step up. That's what I think.
Oh,
in a big way.
Question.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'd rather him step up than have to have Sam Cosmi try and move back again.
Right.
That would just screw up his development more, honestly.
So to do a prediction, so if they keep 4 tackles, obviously Leno, Wiley, Lucas are in, and Braden Daniels is in. I think that's your group right there. And there may be another guy who's like a swing tackle, a swing, player or something. Trent Scott could be, wind his way in potentially if they want to keep a 5th one.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's going to be any surprises in this group.
No, I generally don't think there are often surprises on the line, are there?
Not really, no.
Yeah. Your surprises usually come from specialists, your Alfred Morrises that pop up out of nowhere. Yeah, I think that kind of sums up the tackle group. So one last topic we wanted to quickly discuss just for fun before we go. Dave, you asked the interesting question: which NFL team this season is most likely to end their long playoff drought? So I'm going to read to you the teams that have had a 5-year or more playoff drought now. At 5 years, you have Atlanta and Carolina. Detroit gone 6 years without making the playoffs. The Denver Broncos, 7 years when they made the Super Bowl. I can't believe it was already that long ago. Mm-hmm. And then the New York Jets, of course, number 1 at 12 years. So who's the most likely team to end their playoff drought? I have my prediction mentally, and I'll be interested to hear your guys. So,
is this Dave's topic? So you go first. Dave. I have my thought too.
Well, I narrow this down to 2 teams, the Jets and Detroit Lions, and I do that because the Aaron Rodgers effect. Mm-hmm. The Aaron Rodgers leaving the NFC North, going obviously to the AFC East, and I think when you look at the roster makeup and you look at what defensively and so forth, I think you got to give the edge to the Jets in that perspective, because now you put Aaron Rodgers in there with them having a healthy Breece Hall, having Garrett Wilson out there, and the offensive line out there is actually a very good young unit, probably one of the better lines that Aaron Rodgers would have probably ever played behind, to be honest with you, and their defense is very strong, very solid out there. But they're in a division with the Bills. The Dolphins are no joke, and you have the Chargers and the Chiefs, and so much going on at the AFC. I think just by default alone, in terms of what the NFC has to offer, I think that pushes the Lions over the top. And it's not because the Lions are a bad team either. I think the Lions, offensively, I think if Goff puts on another year this year like it did last year, with them having Jahmyr Gibbs there now, bringing in David Montgomery as that power in between tackle runner, Jameson Williams once he gets back from his betting suspension after 6 games, and already Amon-Ra St. Brown. Their offensive line is a very strong unit as well. They were one of the top rushing teams last year, and that defense is very aggressive out there. They're opportunistic defense. They get turnovers. Mm-hmm. They score on defense. I think they not only make the playoffs, I think they win around in the playoffs, and I think they make a lot of noise, and I think they make a team like Philadelphia a little concerned. Not scared, just a little concerned.
Just to be clear, you're talking about the Detroit Lions, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
Detroit
Lions.
I thought he was talking about the BC Lions of the CFL.
No,
I was sitting here in a bit of a shock because Dave's legitimately talking about positivity at the Lions, and that is a rule that's contrary to the universe. So that's never going to happen.
Yeah, but Dan Campbell has that team coached in a way that team has never been coached.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Is this Detroit?
It is Detroit,
Okay,
yes.
point proven. Summary judgment, please, Your Honor.
I,
No, I'm not buying that for a minute. I mean, I get what you're saying. I
I'm
mean,
very sympathetic to Steve's argument.
Dan Campbell had kind of a vibe, last year for sure. I get it, but it's still Detroit. And they're going to screw it up royally because they always do. No, I think that it's going to be of that group. It's the Jets, not because the Jets are any less of a mess, but Aaron Rodgers is one of the very best quarterbacks in NFL history, and he's been carrying the Green Bay Packers for years. There were many years the Packers were a mess too. And like they got, they didn't draft well at all. They didn't find him any talent on the offense at all. And he's just so good that he just drug every team at least to the playoffs, it seems like. So I'm gonna go with the Jets just because of the Aaron Rodgers effect.
So I'm just for counter argument gonna say the problem is even though Aaron Rodgers makes the Jets better, they're still probably not for sure the fifth best team even in their conference or in the AFC, right? I mean, Bills are better, Chiefs are better, I'd say Chargers are better, Bengals are better, Ravens are better. Then you can start putting the Jets in the discussion of who are they? Are they better than the Dolphins? I don't know. Are they better than they're better than the Raiders and the Broncos at this point, but somebody's got to get in from the AFC South. I don't like it, but them's the rules.
Right.
So like to me, the Jets are not are not a sure thing just because right now the AFC is just a gauntlet of very good teams.
And that's why I went the edge with the Lions like I did.
But you're talking about Detroit though is the problem.
Yes,
but
we are.
Even in Detroit's case, I can make the argument they're not even they're not a shoo-in to win the NFC North. That's for sure. The Vikings are a better team. The Bears could finally maybe put it together, but I doubt it. But they're going to have to get past the Vikings. We're
just talking about what team can like eke their way into the playoffs. Sure. That's it.
I get it. And I'm going to tell you my team that I'm thinking is going to be, and that's the Panthers. The Panthers had a solid team. They drafted Bryce Young, which means they'll finally have even at least decent rookie quarterback play, which is better than they've had for 5 years, it seems like.
I heard Bryce Young is going to be a football player when he grows up.
Yeah. Well, they'll put him on stilts. That's all. Or moon shoes, or whatever those things were that people.
They're going to call Tom Cruise and ask him how to be more than 5'5".
Apple boxes everywhere. So I'd put the Panthers on the list. I could even see the Falcons making a big jump because I think they had a really good draft, but they don't. They have bigger quarterback questions. So, in my mind, the NFC South is the weakest conference right now, arguably, at least in the NFC. So, one of those teams making the jump and getting in the playoffs, that would be my guess.
There you go. We all had different answers, which makes it good.
Yeah.
Yes.
It does make it good. Actually, Steve, did you have an answer, or did you just make fun of the Lions?
No, I said the Jets because of the Aaron Rodgers.
Okay.
It was more fun to make fun of the Lions. Of course. My answer was the Jets.
And I'll tell you what, Steve, if the Lions don't make the playoffs, I'll buy you a Sunkiss. You like Sunkiss, right?
I can't drink anymore, but we'll come up with something else. Yeah.
We'll come up with something. I'll buy a case for you there.
And I'm going to hold you to it.
One of those zero sugar energy drinks or something.
Something.
All right, that should wrap up this week's episode, guys. I hope you all had a good 4th. I hope no one lost any fingers out there. If you did, it's your own fault, though, because
it is.
You're an adult.
It really is.
Yeah. You should not be playing with fireworks. All right? Just stop it, you stupid idiots. All right.
Way to end the show. I like it. Insult the audience.
Hey, it's fun. All right. Bye, guys.
See it.